Great. Uh, what was the reason for transit? I mean, moving over to Singapore.
Going to Singapore is actually a pure cricketing opportunity, sir. I had got opportunity to work as a coach in Singapore, and those days, this was sometime in I think 1996, and to get that opportunity to work outside the country was a great opportunity. I was working for the Visakhapatnam Port Trust, and initially I was offered a 3-year contract in Singapore, but I resigned, and when a lot of people were very what do you call it, upset with me because the port job was something is set for life. But I had left that job just for a 3-year contract in Singapore. But the reason I left was it was a great opportunity for me to work somewhere else with a sport that I liked, so that I took that opportunity, and I never regretted it.
Tell us something about the first class, career in India that you had in before you migrated. With which great players did you rub shoulders with?
I played for Andhra Pradesh, and I didn't play in the 11 in the Ranji Trophy. There, about 4 or 5 games I was in the team, but unfortunately didn't get. But I played junior state and under 25. And one of the junior state matches, Srikanth was captaining Tamil Nadu, and he just came off that win in the 1983 World Cup. This was in Hyderabad at the parade grounds. We lost the game by an innings to Tamil Nadu because they had players like Bharatiya Tarun, then Vishwa Srikanth, then LSL Sivaramakrishnan, R. Madhavan, and T. Madhavan. It was a very strong team. But I was one it as a memorable game for me because I bowled 30 overs. I bowled 30 overs in that game and took 2 wickets for 82 runs, and the 2 wickets were of Krishnamachari, Srikanth, and V. Arun. And in the batting option also, I batted quite well. I scored about 24 not out in the first innings, where I hit L. Sivaramakrishnan for 2 or 3 boundaries, I think 3 boundaries in 1 over. And in the second innings, also I scored 22 not out, and it was a very, very satisfying game for me.
I think if Australians had seen you batting against Sivaramakrishnan, they would have hired you before the 1985. Okay. Tell us something about the coaching that you did. Is there an echo coming?
Yeah, there is an echo coming.
Yeah. Tell us something about your coaching in India. Any famous wards that you had?
Actually, being a senior player, what happened was I just started helping with the junior boys there.
One minute, Sarika. Please mute Jagdish Tendulkar. Nitin, please mute Jagdish Tendulkar. He is on. His mic is on. It is the...
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. Okay, that was causing the disturbance happening.
I was a senior player in Vizag at that time, so I was helping out because we did not have that many people taking up coaching in those days. It wasn't that profitable a profession as nowadays. So we just volunteered, and I helped with some junior teams. One of the notable players that I coached when he was small was Vai Venugopal Rao, who went on to represent India. And there were a few players who went on to play for the Ranji Trophy and the South Zone. And I'm still in touch with Venu quite often, and we speak on a lot of matters.
Great. Did you have opportunity to rub shoulders with Azharuddin or M.L. Jaisima or Vivek Vidyut Jaisima or Vijay Mohan Raj?
In fact, there was one benefit match organized for Chamundeshwarnath in Vizag, where I had the opportunity to play with Azharuddin, Sandeep Sharma, Alvin Kalicharan, and these people. So it was a mixed team. In that game, I bowled and got the wicket of Alvin Kalicharan in that game.
Oh, fantastic. So you were more of a bowler than a batsman, is it?
I was an all-rounder, so I was a left-arm medium pacer and a middle-order batsman.
Oh,
But at the mainly I was at the state level. I was treated more as a medium pace bowler and slightly lower order batsman.
great. So with your permission, we can start some of the questions
Please,
which the people are very keen to, understand and get answers from you. I will just read the question which has been asked by our, members.
please.
I'll read it slowly for the benefit of everybody to hear. In today's context, in international matches, ICC elite panel, etc. What is the process that is followed? Are you aware? I mean, can you educate all of us in terms of an umpire being, very competent, very good, decisions good? Is there any performance assessment? How is it done? If you
Oh,
can throw
definitely.
some light on it.
Definitely, sir. I mean, it's very, very highly scrutinized, especially the allied panel umpires, because what happens is every decision, every appeal is recorded by the some personnel in the ICC there, and depending on the degree of difficulty of the appeal or the response, they are awarded certain this thing. So this is how when we read in the paper, sometimes we see, oh, this umpire got about 94.5% of his decisions right. This umpire got only 89 point some this thing is correct. Because every appeal is, what you call it, is recorded by the match referee. And he has this thing, the degree of difficulty and other factors. So what happens is they're assessed by the match referee, and if there is an umpire coach also makes some noting separately. And these reports go back to the ICC. They're fed into the system, and they come out with these things. And there is also a feedback system. It's not that they're recorded and they say, "Oh, you didn't do well. You got this much percentage." They will discuss with that umpire, saying, "This match is like this happened. What do you think?" So they will see. They will also think, "What was this thing?" And all basing on all these things, then appraisal is made, and then every year the allied panel is discussed by a panel of nominated people involving ICC. There's some commentators and all this. I think Sanjay Manjrekar is on that. Few people are there. So what they do is then they see whether anybody has to be removed, anybody has to be elevated from the lower level, or everyone can be retained and all. And separate assessment is given to all the allied panel umpires.
I want to ask you something which happens, in I would say regular Maidan matches. In India, in Bombay, we have
Correct.
local tournaments which obviously are not televised on television, and but they are very important matches. It may be inter-university, inter-collegiate, or whatever. Now, what happens is in a place like Bombay. Now, I'll give you a typical example. The lifeline of Bombay in terms of transportation is the railway trains, and everybody, most of the cricketers, they come from faraway places, have to depend on either a train or a taxi. And suppose on one specific day when the match is there, they get stuck because the train gets delayed or there is a heavy rainfall, whatever be the reason, the XYZ reason, and they are not able to reach on time. But the message somehow reaches the captain that I'm going to be about 20 minutes late. Now, let's take a typical example that a player is important to the team. He is expected to reach 20 minutes late at 10:20. The match is supposed to start at 10 o'clock. What should the captain do at the time of toss? Is he allowed to nominate him, inform the batting end umpire, the other umpire, and suppose he gets fielding? Is he supposed to field with 10 or can he take a substitute?
Yes, sir. To answer this question, players need to be nominated. If they are not nominated, they are not allowed to play. So a captain needs to nominate his 11 players. Whether they are physically present at the ground or no, that's not relevant at that time. But certain tournaments might have certain rules. In Singapore, we have a rule that at the time when the umpires call play, we should have 7 people from either side physically present at the ground. So like that, we could have our own local rules in place, which we need to abide by. And if a player is not there, suppose there are only 9 players and 2 players are still on the way and they have to field. Obviously they have to field with 9, but if they got any other extra players, of course, like you said, these two are important players, they would have nominated them in the team. For them to be able to take the field, you need to take the permission of the opposing captain, because they are not there, they're not either injured or ill to go off the field for you to give the substitute.
The substitute is not allowed, or it's allowed for a latecomer? For a latecomer,
Substitute for latecomers is not physically present there. You can give a substitute for a player who's injured or ill during the game.
so they'll have to field with lesser number of
game,
players.
they are not present there. They either they have to play with less. What I would do is I would involve the opposing captain. See, they have this issue. These players are on the way, so we can, if you are okay, we can allow the substitutes to field.
Okay, so if the opposing captain is willing to agree, then it is allowed.
Correct. And even in our Singapore cricket, I know these things happen. What we put the rule is they can field for a maximum of 1 hour. After 1 hour, if they don't turn up, they have to start fielding with 9.
Okay.
That is again a local rule. If no rule such exists, if the other captain is okay, they can continue to have the 2 substitutes on the field. And when these 2 guys turn up, whatever time they are off the field, they would not be allowed to bowl for that amount of time.
Okay, thank you. There's one question which one is asking. These days, how are the, I think you have answered this question about the errors of the umpires, so we'll skip that.
Yeah.
The next question is, a batsman plays a ball to point and there is no fielder. The batsmen run 2 runs and are in the process of running for the 3rd. Both umpires were looking for short runs, so their attention was on whether the bat was correctly within the popping crease. When the 3rd man fielder reached the ball and threw wildly, which the bowler missed, it went to the mid-wicket fence for 4 overthrows. How many runs should be credited? Should it be 3 plus 4 or 2 plus 4? Now, I think what the questioner is asking is, the umpire's attention was more on the short runs and not probably at the time or the instant when the ball was thrown. So can you throw some light on this tricky question?
Okay, I agree. It's a tricky question. I mean, what I would do in this situation is, I cannot give something which I have not seen. All right. So if I would check with my colleague about the crossing, and if both of us are not sure, we need to just go with 2 plus 4, 6 runs. Of course, we have made a mistake, but we can't make two mistakes to make one right. We cannot now, without seeing, just to give 3 plus 4. If you have not seen the crossing, ideally we should look for the crossing. Although it is important to look for short runs, but when a crossing occurs, what one of the field techniques should be to quickly look where the batsmen are and then look for the short runs. Because at this stage, I will not give, I mean, personally, this is my thing. If these 2 situations are involved, I would not give that very much in terms of the short run, because it could be a very, very minimal this thing where they miss by. But that means the crossing, it could, like you said, it could affect these sort of things. But on hindsight, both are very, very important. It all depends on how well we can use our field technique to make sure that we don't miss either of those. But if you have missed that, we can't, like I said, make 2 mistakes now. We just have to stick with 2 plus 4, 6 runs, because we have not seen whether their crossing has occurred or not.
Thank you. One of our panel umpires from the group, I don't know whether he's present today, Tushar Pawar, is asking, how do we go about time management in a T20 game conducted in lower level matches, as there is virtually nothing in the umpire's hands to penalize the team going beyond its allotted time of 90 minutes for the game? Some of the amateur playing teams take about 120 minutes also, even though we as umpires push them to complete their innings as early as possible.
I totally agree that it's very, very tough. We need to have some rules in place in the playing conditions. If you're not, it will be very tough. At the most, what the umpires can record is they can record every allowance which is not the fault of the fielding side, and they do not blame them. For example, if the ball has gone well beyond the boundary line, it's gone somewhere, takes some time, the batsmen are having drinks, all these we take out the time. But if there are no slower penalties for such this thing, then it's very tough to take action against the team, and there's nothing in the umpire's hands. So ideally, if there are no such rules in place for the thing, one of the things that could happen is at the toss, have a word with both the captains and make sure that they agree on something for this. Then if not, what happens is it just any team can take the other team for a ride in this situation. So ideally at the time of toss, you tell both the captains, guys, there is no particular this thing, but why don't we agree in the interest of the game that we will stick to 90 minutes. And if there is anything beyond 90 minutes, maybe whatever overs have been bowled at that stage, the fielding team will complete the 20, but when they bat, they get only 19. That is one option. Or the other thing is we put X number of runs. If you bowl over short, maybe we give the team for every over shot, we give 10 runs or 15 runs or whatever runs they've scored. Some sort of an agreement we can get the captains to do. That is the only thing, sir. But ideally, any type of, if it is a tournament, official tournament, we need to get the organizing body to make sure that they get this into their rules.
Normally, when we introduce penalty runs, it becomes a big issue and a big dispute. So that becomes really challenging for the umpire when penalty runs are awarded.
Agree, sir. But what is the other options? Because there is no monetary fines we can do over here. Either thing, what you could do is docking of points, which could make a more what do you call it? It's a higher penalty for them, docking of points or something if they bowl slow. So there should be some this thing in Singapore. Like what we used to have is, if a team bowls after all allowances, if the team has bowled only 19 overs at that stage, we tell the captain, guys, you only completed 19, so you're 1 over down. You still complete that over, and then when you bat, you all get only 19 overs to bat. All right. Or what we do is at certain stage, if it's for the second team, what we do is if they are short, for the first team, we take the best 10 overs. Best 10 overs is the top 10 scoring overs. So maybe the top 10 scoring overs come to about 90. So we take the average of 90 is about 9 runs thing. So if they are short by, second team is short, 9 runs are added extra, plus ground weather light permitting, they still got to complete the 20th over. So these sort of penalties, what happens is have a bearing on the teams because they are already in place in the rules. So then they have to follow that.
Thank you. The next question he is asking is, which is the...
This is Prithviranjan Vijay Singh from Odisha.
Hello, you can keep your question for the end, gentlemen. Please mute your audio.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, actually, I have something to speak on this particular question. That's why I interrupted. Thank you, sir.
Sarika, should we take it now?
No problem, sir. Please.
Okay, please go ahead.
Sir, good evening, sir. I am from Odisha. Prithviranjan Vijay Singh. Sir, for particularly this question, we have experienced some local playing conditions like that after allowing all the allowances for that team, suppose the team did not complete their quota of overs. So what we do is the ongoing, let's say we are having 1 hour and 25 minutes per innings, and then after we add the allowances, and after giving the allowances, the teams has not completed their 20 overs, they are still bowling in 18th over. So we wait to 18th over to be completed, and rest 2 overs, we just award that 2 overs will become the power play. So that we have also adopted in one of the tournaments, and it worked really well.
That's very good. I mean, again, I tell you, this is something which you could put it in your playing conditions, which very good. What happens then? It becomes a binding for the teams that if they don't do it, that there some sort of penalty for them. So that is my answer, sir. And this is also a very good one, player from. I think it's a good thing to have in your playing conditions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Can we move ahead, gentlemen? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So the next question Tushar is asking is, it is the last over, it is the last ball. 8 runs are required to win, 7 to tie. It's a T20 game. Side A is batting, side B is fielding. If the bowler oversteps and bowls above waist height, would you allow 1 run for the no ball and 5 penalty runs for the beamer if he was already warned once before?
Sir, here for the beamer, full pitch above the waist, there is no penalty runs. It is just if he has already bowled one and he is on a final warning, the bowler will be just taken off from bowling. Another bowler has to complete his over who has not bowled the previous one or will not be allowed to bowl the next over. And there will be a no ball and a free hit on the next ball, sir.
So no
As far as
penalty
I
of
know,
5
there are
runs.
no penalty runs for the full pitch above the waist.
The next point he's asking is, if the batsman manages to hit the ball and run 3, and while taking the 3rd run, the non-striker is run out, what would be the result? I think it's superfluous because the 5 runs penalty does not apply at all.
Correct, sir. There is no 5-run penalty
Yeah.
here because there's only 2 runs are completed.
Absolutely.
When 1 run for the no ball is scored and a free hit with the new batsman, I think, the new batsman will be on strike for the last ball.
Correct.
Because it was the non-striker who got run out on the 3rd run.
Next question is, a batsman is on 98. He drives to deep mid-off and starts to run and completes 1 run. He turns for the second. The non-striker is heading towards the bowler's end umpire for completing the 2nd run, is halfway through when the throw from the mid-off fielder misses the stumps and is backed up by short mid-on, who collects the ball and throws at the non-striker's end. The non-striker dives to be in the crease, but the ball hits him and is deflected. Would you give out for obstructing the field? Something similar to what recently happened. I think you got the case, right? You got the
Yes.
situation, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. I understood your question. I think here, first, I think as the umpires, we need to confirm whether there is any intentional or deliberate obstruction of the field. Because if it is an accidental thing, there will not be any obstructing the field coming into thing. But if there is a deliberate thing, if we call it, then we have to take action accordingly by cancelling all the runs and giving the batsman out. But in this case, what we need to do is call a dead ball. You discuss with your colleague and you make the decision. If it's a televised game, if both of you are not sure, you can refer it to the TV umpire with a soft signal.
In the case of obstruction of field, those runs completed are allowed, isn't it?
Yes, the whatever runs are completed will be scored. Here in this case, it was the 2nd run, so 1 run will be scored. The non-striker will be out, run out.
Okay.
Where a case of a catch is being obstructed or something, in that case, all runs will be disallowed.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, this question is from Sachin Kamath, who is on our program today. Sachin is asking, when a fielding side appeals for an LBW decision and umpires gives not out, then is the fielding side entitled to get an explanation why it is not out?
It's not really, sir. I mean, there is no this thing. By the umpire saying not out is an indication of the umpire's decision, right? But a polite inquiry will always be answered with a simple 1 or 2 words without going into details. Like we see, it's a good practice rather than being brushing off the thing. Why? How's that? Not out. So why is it not out? Oh, I just said not out. No, carry on. Then what happens is the relationship does not. I mean, we don't build a good relationship with the players. So you could just say, I thought it was missing leg stump or missing off stump or impact was outside. Simple things. We don't have to go into detailed explanation. But in case they try to prolong, because these things can happen. If you say it was off stump, but sir, I bowled an in swinger, the bowler will tell. If you say ball was missing leg, but sir, it was an out swinger, how could it be missing leg? So we don't want to go into all the things. You just say 1 or 2 words, and if he prolongs, I've made my decision. So please, let's continue with the game, gentlemen, and we move on.
Sachin, I hope you're happy with the answer given. Next question Sachin is asking is, Gentlemen, can you be off your video, please? Galaxy J2, the new entrant. Only Mr. Sarika and I will be on the screens. Yeah. Sachin's next question is, when an umpire gives not out for an LBW appeal, and when the fielding side takes a DRS review, then is the on-field umpire required to give an explanation as to on what aspect he has given not out?
For the DRS LBW appeal, once it has been challenged, it is up there. It is not necessary for him to give any explanation for the TV umpire. But if he feels that was a case, he had made that decision whether he has to convey whether in that particular case he considered the batsman was playing the shot or he was not playing a shot, because then it makes it easy for the TV umpire to make a this thing whether he would to ignore the impact was outside the off stump or not. That thing only he needs to clarify. Like, for example, if it's a review given out, not offering a shot. So what happens is immediately the TV umpire also will tell the director, we got a review for an LBW decision, player review, on-field decision was out. Umpires considered not offering the shot. So immediately what happens is the impact is taken out. When they go for first they will check this one anyway for any inside edge or anything. After that, when they go for the ball tracking, they will not worry about the impact because it's already been considered as a umpire by the on-field umpires as not offering a shot.
Sarika ji, this issue of soft signal has been creating a lot of confusion and discussions, debates among various cricket lovers. Yes. Now, I believe, and I may be wrong, of course, that the soft signal is given when the umpire is not 100% sure. Now, if he is not 100% sure, shouldn't the benefit of doubt rule, which is there, favor the batting side instead of him giving a soft signal to the TV umpire and telling him that I consider him out?
See, sir, if there is no DRS or if there is no umpire review which you can take, what would you do? You would stick with your decision, right? Whatever you are given.
Correct.
Whatever you think is right, you will stick with that, out or not out, you will give it.
Yes. Yeah.
But here you got an opportunity to get it right. But what you're conveying to the guys is, this is what you felt. So why that soft signal is there, right? If there is no conclusive evidence in the replays, so what the TV umpire would now do is, okay, I don't have any conclusive evidence to overrule your out or not out decision. So you can stay with your decision. So basically what is happening is, it is staying with the umpire's decision of what he has thought, whether he has given the benefit of doubt to the batsman or not. So what happens is that stays. That is the reason soft signal. Although there is a lot of controversy about this, the idea of having that soft signal is to take back to that olden age things about the benefit of doubt still being existent there. Because sometimes the technology might fail. All right, when they're reviewing, the technology might fail. So what they will do is, guys, the technology has failed. So please, Nitin, please stay with your on-field decision. That's all.
Now, if you have to apply this statement that you mentioned about technology has failed. Now, if we take this recent example of Ben Stokes' catch, I don't know if you happen to see that. It was apparent to most people on TV that it was grasped and then probably picked up on the rebound. And the umpire had given him out. I don't know whether it was Nitin Menon or it's the other person, but soft signal was given out. And then I think it was overturned. So in that case, it can be, against the batting side.
Yes. Yes, it could be. Like I said, benefit of doubt always could be or could be against also. But this is what the on-field umpires have felt, that what in their opinion they felt. So even now in our teachings now, previously how it used to be is, if the two on-field umpires gather for a catch which the on field, bowlers and umpire is not sure, he cannot just go to the strikers and umpire and ask him, hey, what do you think of the catch? So the conversation should go as, see, look, I did not have a clear this thing, but what I felt was this. He should also tell his version, what he felt. But unless he's completely, he could not get a view of it. Sorry, man, I could not see anything. What do you think? Did you see anything on that? So if he's sure, yes, I've seen it's clearly taken, and if you accept it, you could come and give it out. But if you are not sure, and your colleague also says, so I was also not very sure, partly the keeper blocked me and all that, then you have to come back and give the benefit of doubt. So here in this case, if you are going to put it to the TV umpire, you guys have to agree on something. So you're also not sure, your colleague also not sure. So when you go to the TV umpire with this, what you will do is, you will do this, because you are not sure. That's why your this thing was not out. But with the TV umpire, he has seen all the angles, he's seen the thing, and he knows it's a very fair catch. He has that conclusive evidence that fingers were under the ball. He couldn't see the ball bouncing in front of his hands or anything touching or the grass moving where the ball could have touched, and all that. He's absolutely sure with all the angles. Then he'll go to the on-field umpires and say, guys, I got a conclusive evidence that the catch is taken clearly. So you could give the batsman out.
Now with this pandemic situation and most host countries being allowed to, have their own elite panel or their best umpires, like in this case, India's case now, or even in Australia. But once we come back to a non-COVID, non-corona situation back to normal, will the two DRS reviews from 3, now today they are 3, will they come back to 2? Is that what the thinking is?
Correct. They will go back to 2. The only reason why they put increase to 3 is because of that factor. Because they're having home umpires, they could be under pressure. The visiting team could think that there could be a case of biasness due to a lot of pressure from the home team. So to avoid these things, they're given an extra review. But if they go back, I think they will surely go back to 2 reviews. But on a personal front, just deviating a bit, I'm quite happy with home umpires doing, like what we have seen, the way that Nitin and Virender and Anil and all umpired. I'm definitely sure they've done on par, if not better, than most elite umpires would have done, because Anil and Virender and all, they've umpired here their whole life. So they know they would have done countless 4-day games and all, and countless games on very, very difficult tracks and all that. I mean, here at international level, maybe you're playing on good track, maybe certain Ranji Trophy games and all could have been played on something like this type of dust balls. So they're all experienced. They know. That's why you could see their confidence in the way they handle these appeals and all that, why they came up good. So I don't see any reason, at least one umpire should not be a home umpire in a test game, if not 2.
Somebody's audio is on. Can I request somebody to... Hemant, I think your audio is on. Can you please mute it? Yeah. You have umpired probably in various countries. Have you done in many countries or only in Singapore and India?
No, sir. I've done in I've done in South Africa. I've done games in America and in Canada. I've done games in New Zealand. Okay. Australia. Okay. Quite a few of the.
Excellent. The reason why I'm asking you, why I intended to ask you this question is, as an umpire, what is more challenging to give decisions, especially the LBW, in heavy weather or when it is overcast? Compared to a spinning track like what we had in Chennai or in Ahmedabad recently, where the dust was flying and, from day one, the ball was turning square. So for an umpire, which is more challenging, a pitch at Perth or a pitch at Old Trafford, which is steaming and fast, or Lords, or something like what you saw in Ahmedabad and Chennai? I hope you got what I'm trying to say. Spinning, yeah.
For me, I mean, as an umpire, to answer this, everything has its own challenges, sir. because I have done like in the course of my this thing, I would want to come back to this, but since the question came up, I had this issue in New Zealand in an under-19 World Cup, and I did very badly in that particular game, Sri Lanka versus Zimbabwe, and I lost the toss with my colleagues, so I had to go to an end where the wind was coming right at my face, right? And it was a cold and very windy day, and Sri Lanka had two very good left arm over the wicket bowlers. They were swinging in, swinging out, and all. And I got a couple of them wrong, and I got quite a few very good decisions, but those were due to the really bad weather there and all, and it was very difficult for me to concentrate because the wind was really at my face and the ball was swinging a lot and all, and partly I think maybe because of this my concentration was affected and I got it wrong. But there are various challenging factors, and this Ahmedabad and Chennai pitches, they have come with their own challenges. Like I said, if there is it's an umpire from say Australia or England or South Africa, where the wickets are more bouncy and seaming, I think they would have maybe they would have struggled a bit to get as best percentage of what our umpires got. Maybe I'm not saying they wouldn't or they would, but it wouldn't be that easy compared to what the way our local umpires have performed.
The reason why I asked you is without naming the umpire, I was told that one foreign umpire was finding it very difficult to stand in Indian conditions because the ball was turning viciously and he had not experienced it in his own country. So he was more at home in his own country rather than in Indian conditions. So that really prompted me to ask you this question.
Agree, sir. This is more challenging rather than the challenge you face in places like Ireland, England, and all is rather than the pitches, it is the weather. It could get cold, very, very cold, and you're shivering. You could be having a jacket, you could be having two socks, inners, and all this. But when the cold starts getting under your feet, you think, and it becomes really challenging at times. I've experienced this when I was doing some games in Essex and when I was doing some games in Ireland and all, where maybe I could have made some mistakes because of the weather factor. But pitches wise, it's more easy for our Asian umpires to go and umpire in places like Australia, India, and England and South Africa, where vice versa, they would need to have that experience because you won't have pitches turning and kicking and shooting like what some of our pitches can do back home.
Thank you. The next question is, a batsman hits a low full toss in the air, which brushes the knee of the bowler, breaks the stumps with the non-striker out of the crease. The ball ricochets to be caught by the fielder at mid-on. Who is out?
Okay, this is a case of a run out and a caught.
Yes.
Right? Okay. Basically, in such cases, the court will always take precedence, sir. But if on appeal, the bowlers and umpire had given it out for run out before the catch is completed, then the run out will stand, because the moment the umpire had made his decision, the ball would be dead.
Okay.
It rarely happens because it happens very fast. So that's why the court would take precedence if the umpire had not given it out for run out. But if in case he had given it out for run out, then the run out will stand.
Got it. Next is a rather big question, so I'll take some time to slowly read it for you. A fieldsman catches a ball outside the boundary rope with the feet on the ground, but throws the ball inside the field high in the air, once again jumps inside and catches the ball inside the playing area. Is he out?
Judging by your question, I can understand is when the fieldsman first took the catch, his feet were on the ground outside the field. So in which case, If he was in contact with the ground beyond the boundary, then he came into contact with the ball, it has to be a 6.
Okay.
But if his contact was from within the boundary line, then he handled the ball, he threw it up. Subsequently, he went outside, then came back into the field or jumped up from the air, caught the ball from outside the line and landed inside the boundary line, it would be out.
I think that's what the question is probably asking that question.
So the simple answer here is the first contact and the final contact should be from within the field of play.
Yeah, okay, got it. I hope whoever has asked this question is. Next question is, A is a striker, B is a non-striker. A hits the ball towards cover and runs. Halfway, A does a U-turn and both A and B run towards the striker's end. B is ahead of A and dives to reach the crease. He grounds the bat while the wicketkeeper dislodges the bails. The umpire at square leg is not certain, is unsure if B was behind the popping crease or whether his bat was in the air at the instant the wicket was put down. So to be very 100% sure that at least one of the batsmen should be out, the wicketkeeper throws the ball to the bowler's end, who runs out at the other end. Now, which of the two umpires is out? No TV replay is available.
Okay, here this is a case of run out at both the ends, right? The appeal for run out at both the ends. The wicketkeeper quickly put down appeal and throwed it towards the non-striker's end.
Correct.
Okay, so here it all depends on if the square leg umpire is not clear and he has not given it out, the ball is still in play, and if the batsman has not made the ground at the non-striker's end and he has been given out at that end, he will be out. But if the square leg had taken a little bit of time to give his decision, meanwhile he has thrown that side and affected the run out. But after the square leg, after a few seconds of considering, and then he has raised his finger as out, the batsman at the wicketkeeper's end will be out, because this has happened first.
So the one who apparently did not ground his bat, or the bat was in the air, he is declared out.
Correct, at the wicketkeeper's end.
At the wicketkeeper.
The wicketkeeper, the square leg umpire, strikers and umpire might take a little bit time to give his decision, but the wicketkeeper in this case may not wait. He would have just hit the stumps and somebody said bowler, he would have thrown the ball there immediately.
Yeah.
And the run out would have been affected over there, that side also.
Yes.
It's the case of square leg umpire giving out for stumping and the bowlers and umpire giving out for caught. So here the caught will take precedence. In the same scenario here, the situation what happened at the striker's end has happened first. So if the square leg umpire has given it out, the guy who did not ground the bat at the striker's end, he would be the batsman who is out.
Great. Many a times the question is put, a batsman who is bespectable. Let's take the case of Anshuman Gaikwad, who used to wear specs during his playing days and batting. Suppose he goes for a hook and his specs dislodges the Anshuman Gaikwad, who used to wear specs during his playing days and batting. Suppose he goes for a hook and his specs dislodges the bails. Is he out? Is one of the questions asked.
Yes, sir, he will be out, because there will be a part of his person, whether it is specs or his hat or a helmet or his bat, they all become part of his person as long as the ball is in play. He's trying to avoid the ball. He moves his head, then the spectacles come and the bails are dislodged. He would be out.
I remember classically Ashok Mankad's cap had fallen in England.
Correct.
I think it was the 1974 tour, and he was batting very well, and unfortunately he was out.
Correct.
In such a case, is it hit wicket or is it bowled?
So hit wickets.
It's called hit wicket. One question which was debated, and probably you're already aware of it. The ball has been hit by a batsman and it breaks into two. One part goes over the boundary, half goes over the boundary and half is caught. What happens in such a scenario?
Okay, very good, because like These are things which could rarely happen.
Absolutely.
They say very hypothetical. I truly agree, but we have to understand that MCC laws are there to govern the game, because you need to have some sort of rules to play any game. If there are no rules, we will not know how many balls to play, what is LBW, what is stumping, and all that. So the rules are in place. This thing came up in our ICC discussions also. So ideally, what we do here is, it we can't say it can't happen, because there could be a scene at a very lower level of the game. They could be using a very inferior quality ball, a really inferior quality ball, and the batsman hit it hard. It it could happen. So in this case, what we do is we go as per law 41.2.1 and call it a dead ball and have the ball reballed, because nothing resembling the specifications of a cricket ball have been caught, right? And furthermore, we cannot have two judgments to be having one out and one six, not possible. So what here we do is we call it a dead ball, because it's not something under the thing of the game. So, and we have it reballed.
There is a gentleman, Ravi Manu, wanting to join. Is he known to anybody?
Ravi Mano, yes sir, is one umpire from Singapore. Ravi Mano.
It's gone off. Okay, if we let him come again. An umpire miscounts the number of balls and allows the seventh ball in a non-televised important final of an inter-university match of limited overs. In the playing conditions, a free hit rule is mentioned for a no ball.
Yes.
The seventh ball happens to be a no ball, which was miscounted.
Okay.
After signaling the no ball, the scorer indicates and shouts at the umpire that he miscalculated, which the umpire now realizes. What should the umpire do? Allow the extra delivery and allow the free hit.
I think we have discussed this in many of our this thing. Again, I would go back to one of the things I repeated. To make mistakes, do not make one right. So what we do is, we already made a mistake by bowling the seventh ball. And what we now do is, we just call it over and move on. There is no free hit. There is no eighth balls.
So the batting side could protest, saying that you are disallowing a free hit.
Yes, say you are doing it and as per the rules, because you already gave them an advantage by giving the seventh ball.
Okay. Yeah, that
I
could
already
be
made a mistake. So I cannot. If I know that my miscounting was wrong, I realized it, I can call over at any time.
Thank you. The next question is, a fielding captain has a 5-4 field. The onside has a deep fine leg, a leg slip and a square leg, 2 feet behind the strikers and umpire. The bowler's end umpire notices that there are more than 2 fielders behind square leg. What should he do if 1, a wicket falls, number 2, a wicket does not fall but the batsman scored 3 runs on the offside?
Okay. Here there is the fielding infringement on the leg side. Okay. Here in the first scenario is there are a wicket falls. Sir, it is the strikers and umpire decision. So if he has given it out, there is no way that you from the bowler side, bowler's end can go and tell him, no, there were 3 guys, you change your decision. But if the strikers and umpire comes to you for consultation, yeah, I could not see behind, did you see? And if you are very sure, you could say, yes, as far as I'm concerned, I think there were 3 behind the thing, and it's up to you, because it's the strikers and umpires decision. He should make the call, and we should do that.
No, okay. So in this case, suppose it's a catch in the slips, which is the decision of the bowlers and umpire. Correct. What should the bowlers and umpire do? Give him out or give him not out?
He has to give him out, because the fielding restriction has to be called from the striker's end.
Okay, so if he misses or he does not realize, then you continue with the game as normal.
Yes, we continue with the game. If they even the fielding, the teams, the batsman says, sir, there are 3 only. How could you give it out? Okay, then the strikers and umpire says, okay, wait. Then he could come to you for consultation. Then he asks you, yeah, I didn't get that. Was there three behind? Then you could say, yes, I think in my opinion, there were three behind, but it's your call. Then he goes and calls it's a no ball for fielding infringement. Then it's fine. But one field technique, what I can suggest as an umpire is, if you think there is a fielder behind you, there is such an situation might arise where you could have three people on the leg side. You could either move back to 30 yards, so you could have all the fielders in your view, or the age-old practice of you move to the offside, where you could have a clear view. Okay. And the second question is, a wicket does not fall, but the batsman scored 3 runs on the offside.
Yeah.
So what I would do as my bowlers and umpire is, I will try to bring it to my attention of my colleague, even that if requires me to leave my position and speak to him, because it's better. Prevention is better than cure, they say. So let the fielding side know about it, but it's better, it can be corrected rather than I just wait for a situation like what happened earlier, a wicket falling happened. So what I could do is when the ball is dead, I will just go to I just signal to my colleague, three behind. If he notices and he brings it to the thing, it's fine. If not, I will go and personally speak to him and then let him have a word with the captain saying that he's got to make this change, that they are three behind.
So is it allowed? Is a little sorry extension for the same question. So the strikers and umpire realizes that the bowlers and umpire realizes that the strikers and umpires has missed it. A catch is taken in the slips, but before giving out, he walks to the strikers and umpire, tells them that you missed this probably, and the catch is taken. The both of them consult each other, and then they can give the batsman out, right? Or
I
not out.
mean, consultation can be done in any this thing of doubt, but here the bowlers and umpire can go if he is not sure of the, what do you call it, the taking of the catch, not the process of the number of fielders, the infringement of fielding thing and all that.
So he is not allowed to go and talk to the strikers and umpire and bring it to his notice, which is a very critical point because there is a wicket falling.
Yeah. So again, it depends on the umpire said that this thing, how much this thing they have, how much you are sure. Because you're at the bowler's end, you're absolutely sure, then it does not prevent you from going and having a word with him, with your colleague on this. But how sure are you from your bowler's end when the guy is maybe just 1 or 2 steps inside the line? Because the fielding side might then ask you, sir, the strikers and umpire is in the best position to judge, or you could make the judgment from there.
At this point, can the strikers and umpire declare a no ball after it's been brought to his notice?
Yes, he can do that.
In that case, the batsman is saved.
Yes, correct. He can do that. Because if you see, it happens also sometimes in the fielding restriction. I think it happened with Ian Morgan once. He got caught because he tried to hit because he knew that the number of players required in the within the 30 yards were not there. There are more fielders outside. As soon as he hit, he was caught. He stood his ground and he started showing that they were not there. So both the umpires consulted. They saw that the fielder was outside. Then what they did was they called a no ball immediately.
Okay, so something similar.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Next question is, in an ODI or T20, how does the concept of free hit work? Is it given for every no ball and every wide ball? Is it, if on the next delivery is a 6 is hit, does the batting side get 7 runs?
Free hit is awarded only for the no ball, sir, not for wide balls. Only if the...
Yeah, a little bit.
1 minute. Can you please, Hemant, can you please mute your audio?
Sorry.
Hemant?
Sorry. One second.
Yeah. Sorry, please go ahead.
So free hit is given only for the no ball, but subsequent the free hit ball, if it is a no ball or a wide ball, then the free hit continues.
Yeah. Now this I had preempted. Maybe you can now
So if a
explain this.
6 is, sorry, I didn't complete your question. If
Huh.
a 6 is a hit
Huh.
of a free hit ball,
Yeah.
it will only be 6 runs because the no ball has already been given for the previous no ball and the next ball is a free hit ball. Unless it's a no ball,
Huh.
again, it will not be 7 runs. It will be only 6 runs of the free hit ball.
Okay. And if the free hit ball also happens to be a no ball, then it is 7 runs.
Then it is 7 runs.
Okay.
And again, the subsequent ball will be another free hit ball.
Okay, now we heard that a question is asked. We heard that in a T20 match, Team A wanted 11 runs to win of the last ball, and the team still won. How can this be possible? Can you explain any scenario?
Uh,
11 runs.
I think this question was asked earlier also in the thing. What scenario I could see is that, okay, 11 runs to win, the batsmen have hit a 6 and subsequently after the game ended, there was awarding of penalty runs, example like changing the condition of the ball and then which can be awarded even after the game has ended. So 6 runs they scored there and 5 penalty runs for the changing the condition of the ball. The batting team wins the game.
What about umpire miscounting? Suppose he miscounted 5 balls and 1 ball remained.
The balls as counted by the umpire will stand, sir.
So that is not allowed.
That's not allowed. So nowadays, the best practice, since we are all umpires and everybody is aware, that is the reason now in some T20 games, the umpires make eye contact and signal 3 to go, 2 to go, and then 1 to go. So the idea is one is to make the eye contact, next one is not to miss the balls. And even a scorer or somebody informs you, like suppose you called it an over, unless the bowler has not started his run up for the next ball, and the scorers tell you, sir, there is one more ball, you could bring the team back together and bowl that ball.
So even if an over is called, the umpire can revoke that call of the over?
Correct. If you called it over and everybody has gone into the position and the next bowler is getting ready to bowl, then it's brought to your attention and you realize that it is actually a 5 balls last over. You tell the fielding captain, guys, hold on, please. One more ball to be bowled in the last over. Sorry, I missed it. Please get back to the position and ask the bowler to come and bowl the 6th ball.
Okay, great.
No problem at all. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, thank you. Next question is, we see many times substitutes on the field. Does the outgoing fielder really tell the umpire that he is going off the field and that a substitute will field for him? If he does not inform, what action will you take? In local matches, what should we do?
Sir, in this case, sometimes it's not every time the fielders will be keeping on informing. Sometimes the fielder will tell the captain, I'm going, the captain will be informing you, or another fielder will be informing you. As long as you get the information, that is fine. At times, even if you don't get the information, for me, good field technique is, if I see somebody going out, he is not informed, I'll quickly ask the captain, is anybody as your fielder's gone outside? Yes, sir, sorry, sir, he has gone out. Hey, please make sure that the umpires are informed, and all that. The idea is, sometimes the players are not aware of all the rules. They just want to play. But it is our duty if you come. I mean, we don't want to go into every nitty-gritty of the game. But if you have seen it, all right, and I just leave it. Okay, let's see, another guy is coming in, or when he comes back, because he went without the field, I'll penalize the game. No, if I see him going out, I'll ask the captain, is any of your fielders going out? Sorry, sir, yes, he was going out and all. Then let him explain.
So more be a friendly conductor of the game than a controller of the game.
Yes, I mean, at times we need to have give and take. We need to work with the players as much, I mean, as
friendly.
As the rules permit. We don't have to go over the thing like nowadays. We don't have to inform any fielding team if they don't have the required fielders in the circle. Previously, we could do it as a friendly way. Even in ICC games, they used to tell us, I mean, about 8-10 years back, oh, if they have only 3 people, 3 fielders in the 30 yards, you could just quickly bring it to the captain's notice. Oh, you have only 3. So what happens is, what happened was, when these things happened, at times the umpire noticed. At times the umpire noticed when the bowler was about to bowl and he called a no ball. Sorry, you told us last time, you didn't tell me this time. So they're talking as if it's an umpire's fault, the players. So nowadays, this thing is, you don't tell them anything. If it's a no ball, you just let it happen and you call it a no ball. At times, they used to tell us just without telling, you just look around, make it a little bit obvious for the fielding team. Now there is nothing of that sort. If there are no required fielders in the circle, even if you have seen it when the bowler was going back, wait for the ball to be bowled, call it a no ball, and tell him fielding captain, fielding restrictions.
I think this soft signal thing you have already told, so we'll skip that.
And just answering the question about the fielder going out, it's our duty. If we see, we have to inform our colleague also. Like somebody has informed me, hey, sir, I'm going off the field. Okay, carry on. And I should tell my colleague, hey, Vishwanath number 11 is going off the field. 10-15, external injury or internal injury, whatever. So we are both in the same thing, and we both know what time he has gone out, which fielder has gone out, and the reason he has gone out. Because we don't want to be in a situation that he has gone out, when he comes back, handles the ball, the other umpire calls a no ball. He says, no, he has told me and left, but you're not informed me. So it's always good for us to have that teamwork as colleagues.
Can you educate all of us on the grounds on which a substitute is not allowed?
Substitute is not allowed. There are very, very rare situations, because like I said, the fielder says any reason, unless he just says, I'm going off. What is the reason? Are you ill? Are you injured? Or is there any very valid reason? Some of the other valid reasons which could be still warrant a substitute is, he may not be ill, he may not be injured, but he may be required somewhere else. Like for example, he's a doctor, he's suddenly required in the hospital, or he's a national serviceman, he's suddenly required for some this thing and all that. So these are reasons which are beyond the control of anybody, where a substitute could be given. Okay, we cannot win. But there are very, very rare reasons, like a fielder says, I'm just going off. Why? Oh, I'm not interested. I'm going off. Fine. He can go off. You tell the fielding captain, sorry, you do not get a substitute for this, because he's neither ill nor injured, nor he has a wholly valid, acceptable reason for a substitution.
See, nobody would probably give this kind of obvious answer, but suppose somebody is really tired. Let's assume theoretically it's a very hot day.
Yes.
And that fellow has bowled some 40-50 overs.
Yes.
And he's really tired.
Yes.
And he wants to take rest, but he doesn't want to say that he's tired.
Yes.
He can feign a headache or a stomach ache and tell you.
Definitely. Definitely.
And you will allow the substitute?
Yeah, if he fails, we have to allow, because we are not doctors, because these things have happened in certain levels of the game in certain countries, where the rule of the law is very, very strict, because you're not doctors. So some guy, he said, sir, I'm very tired, I'm getting a chest pain. No, you just bowled, you're tired, you want to go off, you stay there. So that guy runs 2 runs and then collapses, and he's admitted in hospital, and the doctor says, so he had a cardiac arrest. Okay. And the fielding team says, sir, the fielding team has told the umpire that is having this pain, but the umpire said, no, you cannot go, and he could be sued.
Okay.
So yeah, here we cannot prevent anybody saying, I have a headache, I have a stomach ache, I have a thing and all that, to go. But what if he exceeds 8 minutes, he will not be allowed to bat or bowl for that amount of time.
Next question is, a bowler's end umpire calls a wide ball, striker ends umpire calls a no ball, wicketkeeper misses and it goes for 4 byes. How many runs are scored and what takes precedence, no ball or wide ball?
Here the no ball will take precedence, although sometimes the wide would have been called first by the bowlers and umpire. We go with the greater penalty, because at no ball there are lesser chances of the batsman getting out compared to the wide ball. Okay, and there is a free hit penalty for a no ball, which is not there for a wide ball.
Okay.
So we will go with the no ball. In a case that umpire has called a wide, bowlers and umpires has called a wide, where the strikers and umpire has called a no ball for the fielding infringement. So the no ball will take precedence. and the 1 run for the no ball and 4 runs will go as
Nice. Yeah. Will you also get a free hit?
definitely it's a no ball, right? Next ball will be a
Free hit.
free hit penalty.
Now, there is a law which talks of batsmen deliberately taking short runs. Deliberately taking short runs.
Yeah.
Why should a batsman, this is a question a person is asking, why would a batsman deliberately take a short run? And how would the umpire judge the intention behind taking the short run and what penalty applies?
Before answering the question, I would suggest our friends, if they have not seen it, Google Kiran Pollard deliberately running short in IPL game. There is this thing, and if you see that video, you will understand why. But I will explain the answer here. What happens is there is a very strong batsman. He is batting with a tail ender, maybe say number 10 batsman. So there are still 3-4 overs left to go. So he hits it into the outfield. He thinks he can comfortably run 2 and get back on strike. Maybe it's the second ball of the over. So suddenly, when he's going for his first run, he realizes that he has miscalculated. The ball has slowed down. Now the fielder is going to field the ball. So if he goes all the way to his non-strikers and crease and turns back, he could get run out. So what he does is halfway he turns back and comes back to the crease at the striker's end. So this is an intention. The intention is he has seen this thing happen. That's why he's turned. And why? What is your? How could you judge it? Because generally, if batsman runs a short run, how short it could be, how much he could miss by 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, maximum maybe about 6 inches, right, sir?
Correct.
It would not be by 3 feet, 4 feet, right?
Absolutely.
And here there is a reason for him also, because he wanted to get on strike because he was with the weaker batsman. So doing all this, that is your questions are all answered. So the intention is there, which is the correct word. So then what we do is we cancel disallow all the runs in this particular case. We have to send the batsmen back to their
respective
ends. We have to signal if there's any penalties for no balls or white balls, we signal those. And if there are any penalty runs, we award those, or any other particular penalties which are applicable. And we inform the scorers as to how many number of runs have to be scored there.
So running runs are not allowed. The runs which were run
are completely disallowed, sir. Plus there will be 5 penalty runs awarded to the fielding side. Because of intentional this thing.
Great. We have some 5 questions left, and then we can throw open to the audience.
Please.
A no ball is called by an umpire. The ball deflects off the batter's pads. The batter did not attempt a stroke. The batters attempt 2 runs, but one is short of his ground when the throw from near the boundary breaks the stumps. The fielding team appeals. What should be your decision?
2 runs for batsman not offering a shot. So the good field technique would always be we allow the batsman to complete 1 run. Okay, when both batsmen reach respective creases, this is when the bowlers and umpire will signal dead ball and send them back to their respective creases. Why we allow them to run the 1 run is, if in this process of that 1 run, if they get run out, the batsman will be out. So this is what the umpire should have done. But if he did not call it, failed to call it dead ball, and if the run out has been affected, the run out will stand and no runs shall be scored, because in this case the batsmen have not offered a shot.
Thank you so much. Can you throw some light on I'll give you 2 examples. Recent test, if you observed, there was a dismissal of Rohit Sharma on 49, where the DRS ball tracking showed that the ball was clipping the top of the base. And very, very identical and similar was the case of Rishabh Pant, who was adjudged not out. They were very similar. I mean, you can say in Hindi, they say 19-20 ka farak. Can you throw some light on this aspect about umpire's call and the ball tracking and the ball clipping the bails. And I heard that Harsha Bogles, there was some video which said of some 50% rule. So can you just, for the benefit of all of us, throw some light on that?
This the DRS, this ball tracking and all, it's all fed into the technology, which makes the call about the ball whether hitting 50% or not. It will go, and that's how it comes out the umpire's call, and whatever the call has been made by the umpire, that this thing will stand. Again, this again goes with that benefit of doubt kind of a thing. That's why this umpire's call is there. Just like a soft signal, this umpire's call also it is there because of the benefit of doubt. So if the umpire has given it out, and what do you call it here, if the ball is hitting the stumps, it would be out. But the umpire has given it not out. The ball has to hit more than 50% of it to be overturned from an umpire's call to the batsman's this thing.
What is your personal view on the umpire's call versus this? Should it remain or should it not remain? Depend totally on technology.
Sir, for me, if you ask me personally,
Yeah, personal question.
If you are going with technology, I would say go totally with the technology. Because now it's become more of a, it's not the, as we see, we all understand, the game is now being taken out from the sports people. There's a lot of marketing people, there's a lot of business people and all into the game. For them, it does not matter. Like in an IPL final, these things happen. Like I can just take back one instance to you all. I mean, just to deviate. Again, I bring Nitin Menon. I think in one of the IPL finals, he gave Dhoni out LBW of the last ball, but the ball went, and I think it went for 4 leg byes. So, in such a situation, if Nitin Menon had given it out, and if the MS Dhoni had reviewed that LBW and it would have come as a not out, the decision is not out, but he will not get those 4 runs back which went for the leg by. So imagine the amount of this thing that particular franchisee can make because of these rules. So certain things are there from a purely cricketing point of view, but now it's becoming more of a marketing is become, the game has become more of a marketing thing, more into a technology thing, and people understand what they see. So you and me being cricketers, we can understand umpire's call. For the guys watching at home in the thing and all, the millions and millions of people, they think why the same thing was hitting the stumps was given as out, and the same thing almost identical is given not out as an umpire's call because he said not out. So for me, I think if you want to make it simplified, if you are going with technology, go totally with it and take out the umpire's call from there.
I think the debate is raging now at ICC level, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, I think it won't be too long where this thing
either this way or that way will be taken.
Correct.
Next question is, the striker hits the ball and the batter completes 1 run. They turn to begin their 2nd run when one of the batters accidentally collides with a fielder who, with the ball in his hand, was wanting to break the wicket. Now, the key word here is accidental. The batsman falls short of the crease. What should be your decision?
What is the question, sir? Striker hits the ball?
The 2 batsmen try to run, and one of the batsmen accidentally collides with a fielder who wanted to run out the batsman.
Okay.
Now, apparently, when you said the question is accidentally collides,
Okay.
but he's short of the crease,
Okay.
and the fielder runs him out.
Okay.
This can happen.
Okay. There are 2 things here can appeal, sir. There could be an appeal for obstructing the field, which in case, again, since it was an accidental obstruction, it is not out.
Correct.
But then if a run out is affected and the batsman is out, what you could do as a captain is check with this, as the umpire is, check with the fielding captain whether he would want to withdraw his appeal because of this accidental collision. If the captain says, yes, I'm withdrawing the appeal, okay, you could let the batsman continue. But if not, there are no decision will stand.
But then in that case, the batting side or the batsman may protest saying that he has come in my way. It is not I who was obstructing, he has come in my way.
Okay.
And I was prevented from completing my run. If he would not have come in between and I have not changed my path also, let us assume that he was running in the same path without deviating. Then in that case, a tricky little bit.
Yes. So again, that's what I'm saying, that it's our this thing to make the call. But in an accidental obstruction, sir, we cannot see, unless you saw an intent that the fielder has deliberately ran into the batsman or come into his way for him to get a run out. You're very clear about it. Then you can act according to the laws there, sir. If not, if it's an accidental this thing, if he's out, you have to give him out. But then you could cast the fielding captain. Whether he
So
if
you, in your opinion, if you felt that the fielder was deliberately, in your opinion,
yes.
fielder deliberately came in between, then will you call it a dead ball immediately?
In this case, I think if it's a deliberate intent, we have to do that, sir.
Okay. And the run is allowed or not allowed?
The run will be allowed. The run, if there is a intentional the runs will be allowed. Even the run in progress at times, even if they're not crossed, if the run in progress will still count in such cases.
We're coming to the last two questions. If the strikers and umpire, I think this is a classical question which comes in most exams, and you must have answered it 100 times. If the strikers and umpire notices that the wicketkeeper crouching is with his gloves in front of the wicket, should he intervene immediately before the bowler delivers, or wait for the bowler to complete his delivery and then give the no ball or a dead ball? And what if a catch is taken behind the wicket?
Here, I think we do not interfere at any stage. We wait for the ball to be bowled and then have to call it a no ball. That's what the laws require us to do. We cannot at that time stop this thing, saying that thing. We have to wait for the thing to happen and then we have to call it no ball.
So even if you notice that it's a fast bowler who's taking 30 paces of run up, you will not stop the game.
No, I mean if the wicketkeeper is standing up and he's got his gloves in front, and then back, if the gloves are come in front, we would have to call it a no ball once the ball is delivered.
Okay, thank you. Last question is, before we throw it open to public in case they have. A batsman hits the ball towards cover point and comes some distance to run and stops seeing the fielder stopping the ball. And the fielder in one action does an action of throwing the ball towards the wicketkeeper, while the ball actually slips out of his hands and the batsman does a U-turn and dives to regain the crease. This is, I think, in terms of faking a throw or something like that. Okay. How will you handle the situation?
This is mock fielding.
Mock fielding
comes under mock fielding. So mock fielding, there is a procedure. What we follow usually is, if by this action, if anybody is bound to be, any of the batsmen is bound to be dismissed, run out or what, you immediately call a dead ball, call the fielding captain, tell the this thing that is his first and final warning. The run will be counted, even the run in progress, even if the batsmen have not crossed, the runs will be counted. And if it subsequently happens, it would be same procedure, but 5 penalty runs will be awarded.
Okay, so the first time penalty runs are not awarded, so only warning is given.
Warning is given.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sarika. I have exhausted the question bank from all the people who had asked questions in advance. So much, thanks so much for spending time and giving clarity to so much of doubts which were there in everybody's minds. We have just 5 minutes left for the program to end. Should any of you have any questions which we have not covered so far, any of the questions, then you are feel free to please raise it. Yeah, Vishal. You're not audible. You're muted.
Sorry, sir.
Yeah.
This is a question regarding the match management skill of umpire, which I face in the second GT20. I was at a bowler and umpire, and Colin Munro was the captain of one of the team. He was at non-strikers at a bowling end, and the opposite batsman was a Canadian player. And as a Canadian umpire, I know him, and I gave him out LBW of Mohammad Irfan's ball, which pitched just 2 inches outside the leg stump. So as Colin Munro was standing on the bowler's end, he saw that his ball is pitched outside leg stump, and I gave him out. So he started swearing and used F words and all that. So I just keep my mind cool down, and he kept doing this for 2 minutes. I just told him that, Colin, you're the captain of the team, and you're shouting, and there is a microphone on the stumps. So just cool down. The decision has been made and out has been given. So just cool down. So he just cooled down. And after 2 balls, suddenly my decision was shown on the big screen. And after seeing that, he again started swearing and doing F words and all that. So in this situation, as an umpire, how much you can control or how much you can handle such situation?
Vishal, I know it's a very difficult situation for you, but one thing is we have to continue with the game. Next, we have to be strong. Just because you realize that you made a bad decision, you don't let such behavior go by. What you need to do is you need to put in a code of conduct report on him and let the match referee take the action. This is dissent against an umpire's decision. It could be anybody. It could be the batsman who is out, or it could be the non-striker. Okay, or any member of the fielding side for certain this thing. If there is a dissent, and if this continues, and if he's using bad language, and it could even go to a level 2 charge also, because abusing the umpire by word or action. Okay, these are all laid out in the ICC code of conduct, and if the game you have conducted is under the ICC, this thing, definitely action can be taken and should be taken against Colin Munro.
Now, one question to Vishal just comes to my mind. Vishal, when Colin told you that the ball pitched outside the leg stump by 2 inches or whatever, did you realize that you had made a mistake?
No, when I realized when it was shown on the screen.
Okay, that time it was too late to reverse your decision.
Yeah, it was like after 2 balls in the same over.
Okay.
But I'm sorry to say, sir, it does not matter whether you realize the decision or not, whether it's a wrong decision or not. That does not give any member of either team to behave like that against the umpire. They can put it in his report. Colin Munro is a captain. He can put it in his umpire's captain's report later that one of the LBWs was so and so. I think we are not happy. But it does not warranty such a behavior, especially from a captain.
Right. Any other question from anybody?
Sir,
Yeah,
one more for me.
Yeah, if you can allow somebody else one more chance, if you don't mind. Yeah, Uday, you had a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I just want to know, like everybody knows that Duckworth-Lewis method was introduced in 1999, I suppose, was adopted by ICC. And after that, was there any changes in that particular method? Because it has been 2 long years since 1999, was there any changes in that?
I think frequent changes have been happening to the DLS. What they do is, every year what they do is, they take the percentage of the scoring. If you see the average run scoring those days in a 50-over game was around the 200. And at later on, it went to 250. Now its average score is becoming around 275, 280. Accordingly, the DLS, this thing is also changes. The versions change a little bit. So different versions.
Audio's off, please.
Audio's off, please.
Audio's off, please. For those who are not raising their questions, please. Yeah.
You mean to say that the decisions are taken by the ICC for this?
Correct. ICC again, they have this ICC cricket committee, which involves one senior coach. It involves somebody from the ICC.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It involves a senior commentator. So this cricket committee makes this decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sham. Yeah,
Thank you.
Sham has a query. Yeah. Sham.
Yeah, one question. Suppose you see you have given a decision of out to a batsman, and then you realize in a fraction of a second that that's the wrong decision. Can you correct your decision?
Definitely, sir. Definitely. Why not? I mean, if you had this thing to do it, nothing like that. This happened in that, I think Nitinji has mentioned that I was the fourth umpire for this West Indies, India and Australia series in 2007. Mark Benson was the umpire at the bowlers end, and Asad Rauf was at the non-strikers end. Tony Hill was the TV umpire, and I was in the box as a fourth umpire there. So Tendulkar went to hook a ball from, I think, Glenn McGrath. Then what happened actually was he finished his shot, turning back, the ball hit his shoulder, and I think Gilchrist took the catch and appealed. Mark Benson gave it out. So Tendulkar was very, very surprised. He looked 2 times, 3 times going off and all that. So suddenly Mark Benson looked at Asad Rauf. Asad Rauf just signaled to him like this. So Mark Benson immediately told Sachin, wait, Sachin, come back. He did this and said not out. So Ponting immediately went to him. Oh, you have given it out. How could you change that? He said, yes, I can do it. It's in my this thing if I do it promptly. And he did it promptly before the batsman had left the field of play. So yes, to answer your question, it requires a lot of guts, sir. But I really appreciate any umpire who can do that. It's not a sign of weakness, but it should not become a regular feature. A one-off thing is fine, but if it's happening regular, this thing, it could be taken as a sign of your, like what I say, your incompetence could be.
Thank you.
Okay, we have time for just 2 questions now. Anybody who has not asked so far?
Well, I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Please.
What I would say is what the umpires are doing on the field is really yeoman service. People don't realize the level of fitness that you require to stand on the field the whole day and with full concentration so that you don't make mistakes. So all I would say is I applaud all the umpires who have been doing this kind of human service. I commend you for all your answers, Mr. Sarika, and all the other umpires who've been on this show and who have stood on the ground for 7 hours a day, and it's not the easiest thing to do. My salutations.
Thank you very much, sir. And on the same note, I would like to thank all of you for being here. And all of us are same, we are colleagues. I had answered everything to the best of my knowledge, but if there is anything, any issue with any of my answers, if anybody has anything, please get back to me. And if I think I made a mistake, I would again want to convey it to the group, the right answer. The idea is actually that we need to get it right. If I had made a mistake, we cannot just leave you go with that. But if anybody has anything, any of the answers, if you think it was not right, if there is something different, please feel free to approach me. And then if it is whatever is the right answer, we can ask Nitinji to convey it to the group. And a lot of my personal best wishes to all of you. Like we're all colleagues during this course. I also have learned a lot interacting with you guys, and it's been an absolute pleasure for me to have had this session with you guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarika. It's been wonderful talking to you, and it's been really very enlightening for all of us. Once again, thank you very much for spending time, and I wish everybody, all the participants, good night and good day to Vishal and those who have tuned in from abroad. Jai Hind, all the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarika sir. Thank you, Nitin sir.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Long live Cricket Unlimited Group. All the best.